Yeah, Facebook.
I'm taking notes.
What do you see? All right.
You're on.
I'm on?
Mm-hmm.
We're on. All right, we're live. Post-Thanksgiving, thank you guys for coming. I invited you guys here. This is very much a private talk. This is a work in progress, I'm not going to lie. This is probably the best I've done since I've been thinking about this stuff, about like how I can organize it into one coherent story. The talk is called Politics as a Data Structure. Mark's going to evaluate if he likes the title of that talk at the end, but hopefully the title will make sense as we move forward. Go next slide. So I'm going to make two arguments tonight that are very bold. I'm not going to lie, they're extremely bold, but I'm confident that there's at least a substantive point that I'm making here. The first one is that adoption of a political operating system, like I'm about to discuss, may be necessary. Obviously, assuming success is the goal. And it's really given two things. The scale, complexity, and the pace of the 21st century, I think, is striking, and I think we're unprepared for it. And I think there's a massive backlog of existing interdependent problems. The second point, which is the positive part, is I think purely with a moderate amount of resources, and really what I mean by resources is human capital, literally really smart people from around the country. It's possible to utilize the political operating system that I'm going to talk about tonight and be astronomically more productive than the United States Congress. I was talking to Ethan before the talk, and he said, yeah, people will probably believe that, but the point I'm trying to make is I think there's a better way to do politics, and I'm going to try to hopefully describe that, make some arguments, and then we'll go from there. All right, so my background, you guys know me, so I'll jump through this. Scholarly party boy. No, I mean, I went to University of Maryland. I was very much a late bloomer. I studied econ and poli-sci. I did well there. I did like a cool honors thesis with a guy who had been in the revolutions of 1989, like a dissident in the Cold War. On my last day of classes, I gave a lecture on how innovators think. I worked on the Hill. I worked for a governor. Had sort of a very interesting background and really had a good time down there. But I came right through to law school to UVA, and I had sort of a double life. And unfortunately for my class and my grades, a quarter of it was class. Really 3/4 of it was through my business, Hartford Lab. So my business, architects, incubates, advises tech companies. We've done early stage startups. We did a publicly traded biotech company. But really what Hartford Lab and my dream for that business is really to have something of a research and development firm. A place where I can, explore, learn about frontier technologies, and hopefully have enough money to fund my own projects. There's been really 3 phases of the company. First, do business development for startups, make some money. Second, start founding our own ventures, which we can fund. And now third, we have a fund from our own returns. So about 200 people worked for me while I was going through law school at UVA, which is why I say double life. It was absolutely insane. So when I left UVA, I sort of had I was like, I don't think I'm smart enough yet. Genuinely speaking, I was like, there is so much to this world. I started working with 2 professors who sort of opened my eyes to like, oh wait, computer science has been here since like the 20th century. There's so many beautiful, rich fields that I hadn't been exposed to. And I really wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore what are the frontiers, whether it's biology or math or science, and what is the synthesis of this? How are these things all fitting together? So I had like a joke, a Ben Franklin lifestyle where you're reading, you're studying, you're Facebook messaging Nathan about set theory, just learning as much as I could, really because I thought, hey, my goal is to be a politician, but a politician is a leader, and I think that should not be forgotten. And there's a phrase that doesn't get thrown around a lot, and I'm not claiming to be one, but you can take it as inspiration, polymath or polymathic. The idea that, pretty bluntly, there's just one world, right? We've broken things up into modules, we have different heuristics, we have different distance scales, but really there's one world and we've carved it up into subject, and that's really a sociological contingent fact. So studying the world as a whole and trying to learn it from as many different angles seems to be obvious. And what's striking to me is that it doesn't seem to be something that happens in, say, an undergraduate education, even a graduate school education. So when I left school, not being a technical guy, but having gotten some technical teeth cutting, if you will, through my work at Hartford Lab, I wanted to just study and learn, point blank. So, from my parents' basement, I started running for Congress, and they kicked me out of the basement pretty quick because, I think they thought it was crazy, and maybe I'm a little too young. I was 26 at the time, And it was crazy. I jokingly titled my essay that was on my website, that was like sort of my background on me, what was it called? And Now My Watch Begins, which is a Game of Thrones reference. And multiple people said, you're crazy for jumping into a political fray at this time. Why would you sacrifice your life, for public servitude? You're 26 years old, you have your life ahead of you. Politics is crazy. To me, it was so funny to hear that, because I'm someone who, since I was a little kid, thought this was my path. So when I hear that, it actually makes me want to do it more, because my opinion, bluntly, is the right people should want to jump into the fray when there's a real storm. And right now we have a storm. I'll talk about some of the problems. This is not a bash people in Washington talk. This is not a talk about, they're dumb, they're stupid, Republicans, Democrats. Not at all. This is really a plan that I came up with about how America could actually be revitalized and what that actual program would look like. So, I'm first going to report my findings, and what the hell was going on is something that really, to put it in a sentence, is how I feel. I'll talk about 5 of them, but these are like sort of 5 takeaways I had about politics. And one is, don't you see the model's broken? That is, today's politics is backwards, precisely because we are not solving problems backwards. People for hundreds of years have been using recursive reasoning to solve hard problems, complex problems, where you see the solution first, and then you work backwards and find the path progression on how you're actually going to get there. Instead, today's politics is insane. Literally, a media cycle comes, and it's completely reactive, and it's entirely chaotic. Media cycle here, media cycle there. There's literally no glacier of work. Everyone starts from, anew when something new happens. And to me, that seemed crazy. It's like, wait, why are they solving problems incorrectly? So that just was a huge sort of meta point that I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. But even more than that, aren't leaders supposed to lead? And what does it mean to lead? It means having the best ideas and telling us what should be worked on. Instead, if you actually think of the way politics works, you have candidates that check the boxes of a party platform that they had no business in building and that they don't understand the modern mechanics of. How superficial and lazy have we gotten? It's actually something that I think has maybe been, in play for a long time, but that to me seemed like, no, that can't be right. And, relatedly, where's the damn discipline? Show me your work plan. Albert Einstein, Alan Turing, Elon Musk, whoever, entrepreneurs, thinkers, Andrew Wiles, they take a problem on that they're going to work on, and they have discipline. They're telling us what they should be work on, and they're doing the work. No one has a work plan in Washington. No one says, you know what, I'm coming in, I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to actually work on them for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Hard things are hard, and I think the funny thing to me is that because of the timelines people are thinking on in politics, 2 years, 6 years, really, they're constantly running. Maybe that's, why you're going to have to get people from outside of Washington to try to take on some of the challenges I'm going to present tonight. Another thing, scarcity is real, right? My background's econ and poli-sci, but I'm an econ guy, and it's like the whole business of economics is because there are scarce resources. You need to make decisions in light of those scarce resources. And for all of us on this earth, me, you, watching, in the room or, at home, you're going to die, right? So at minimum, we can have a social compact where we have a minimal time on this planet. You want to have a good life, I want to have a good life, you want your kids to have a good life, blah, blah, blah. There should be a real exigency, there should be a real urgency in the rate of problem solving. There should be sort of a guiding conveyor belt to your ultimate peril and doom, that why are you working on the wrong problems? Is that morally correct? One of my intellectual heroes has this commentary on fundamental physics, and he says that morally correct behavior is something that is rewarded, because if you work the right way, you get good results. I'm going to contend that there's a proper way to do politics, and there's a proper way to prioritize what should be worked on. I'm going to do on the next slide, not yet, talk about like the difference between emergent problems versus fundamental problems with like sort of a graphic to show you what I mean. But working on emergent problems is stupid. Point blank, it's stupid, and it's also selfish. Okay, it's selfish because of scarcity. Now, where's the rigor? So this is another thing. Is there a way, right, that we could use some type of structure in politics? Are there ways that we could get past, I talked about the campaign, the party platforms. Those are words, right? And I was at a panel when I was running for Congress, and they were like, who's for universal health care? And of course I am. And I'll talk about, sort of a good model or primitives of a model. for universal health care. But I was like, when you say universal health care and he says universal health care and they say universal health care, everyone means something different. Why are we not using a more precise, more rigorous language to talk about politics? And that really bothered me. And then I thought, well, is there a way for a new kind of politics? Could we find some nice structures that could provide basis and then subsequently coherence? So this is what I mean by fundamental versus emergent. P star is the emergent problem. P1, 2, and 3 are P star, is the fundamental problem. P1, 2, and 3 are the different faces of that problem. These should not be worked on. If you work on P1, you will not solve P star. If you work on P2, you will not solve P star. You should be working on P star. And people are working on P1, 2, and 3. And what happens is when you're working on these emergent problems and they exist for a long period of time, there's like a compounding effect. And you have these permutations, you have this festering. Problem 3 gets a lot more challenging. P3A, they permute, right? So this is just sort of a graphic to show just geometrically there seems to be a problem. Why aren't we working on P star? And would there be a way to condense or distill the problems of the world, the problems of our time, the problems of the United States that it will take to fix, to revitalize America with these P stars? Next slide. So, I mentioned that, and now my watch begins. I think literally no one read it. It was a personal essay on my website. It literally had 75 footnotes. It was the most ridiculously written thing I've ever written. But one of the actually nice things I wrote was, in my version of how I think about government, how I think about leadership, and how I think about what they should be doing, I'm a congressman, I'm a congresswoman, they're supposed to be the visionary scouts, right? They're supposed to be the ones who come and tell us where we need to go, where are we going, what's happening, what does the horizon look like. They're supposed to be the ones giving us vision on what the world could look like so that we can, effectuate a really good world, right? And if you don't do that, this is what's happening, you leave, things to another world of chance in the wild. That's the line I like. But it's just a roll of the dice chaos, and that is no way to do anything. So in light of the climate, when I just gave you those 5 things that sort of stuck out to me, I came at this with like a really tabula rasa approach. I knew I wasn't going to win. So I was like, what, why don't I actually just think about this stuff? And the following question seems so underappreciated to me. It's where are we going as a nation and how are we going to get there? And the goal of Revitalizing America, the platform, is to help America find its North Star for the 21st century by generating an end-to-end detailed playbook illuminating our strategic paths to get there. All these words have meaning and they will be fleshed out in this talk. But ultimately, keep in mind, when do you see people really talking about this stuff? When do you see a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 50-year plan? You guys are knowledgeable about technology. You see so many things on the horizon, I'm sure. The further we can see, the better we can effectuate is really one of the main takeaways there. Okay, so here's my little problem solver's journey. Mark and Nathan obviously have I owe a lot of credit to putting up with me and talking with me for so much. But I'm going to walk through sort of 3 things that to me seem to be worth mentioning as far as how did I come up with this, what is the background to this, yada yada yada. So first thing was I want to derive a sort of a meta direction, right? You need to have a goal that's substantiated. You kind of have to have a purpose which is derivable by the Constitution. We live in a world with an existing system. We're not recreating the world. We live in the United States. There is a Constitution. What are we supposed to be doing? And the sort of I was looking for a rule or an axiom or a quasi rule, whatever you want to call it, or a principle. And there's certainly a teleological one. It's our founders demand our government to maximize the life, liberty, and happiness of our people. I call it the American calling. It's a buzzy term, but to me, this is the type of thing that is like a meta direction. This is what we need to be doing. And there's a lot of things to be said on how you would do that, tons of models, tons of different schema, lots goes into it. But one of them that I really fell in love with and has guided a lot of my thinking the past couple of years is something I call the golden sequence. This is value maximization. And really, I think one of the deep stories of human civilization, and you'll see it on the next slide, is that new science leads to new technology, which blooms through new economy. That is how value is created. Another way to say it, new knowledge leads to new inventions, leads to new products, services. right? There's this stack, this beautiful process architecture that connects the subjects, that shows us how, if I dropped you on an island and literally were to teach you nothing else, you had nothing, no civilization. If you were going to cultivate civilization with a group of people, understanding this golden sequence would be very, very, very good starting point. And in some way, this is very much a toy model, but this is to me like this glacier of value. You know, these are different epochs. You know, this is the Stone Age, is, you know, blah, blah, blah. But the idea being that civilization is a proxy for the amount of value in the world. And really, you could think of that kind of as like, how many resources have we created? And that's kind of going to be dependent on the cumulative knowledge of that time. This is very much a toy model, but the overall directionality I'm trying to make is that this golden sequence is very helpful if we want to generate value. And just to be clear, the reason I'm talking about value creation is, imagine a piece of pizza, or a pie of pizza. You can divide the slices however you want. You could be, you know, a capitalist who thinks, you know, this many people should have this many slices and it's okay, people have crumbs. You could be like a straight up socialist who says, you know, 50 people, 50 slices, boom. I don't give a shit about how many slices there are. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how big is the damn pizza. And how you make a bigger pizza, how you have more value is crucial, right? Because the fundamental constraint on a community or a nation to provide for its people is based on how much value there is, how much stuff is there to divvy up. This is before we talk about the allocation. Next one. So that's the first part, sort of deriving a meta direction, you know, sort of studying, you know, science, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, this golden sequence is really cool. This American calling thing is cool. And then I came across this guy, David Hilbert, who's literally my hero. Go a slide up and then go back. Go forward. There you go. This guy. Look at that hat. How can you not love this man? Go back now. Okay. So I was blown away. He's an incredibly influential German mathematician, laid down groundbreaking work, cited to this day, if you will. You know, his work is critical to physics and tons of different areas of math. But he came up with in 1900, a program of 23 unsolved problems. And what was really cool about that is he attracted so many damn people to work on them. And really, not just so many people, but like the smartest people of his time. He was able to say, these are the problems we're going to work on. And by the way, all you really smart people, you should be working on these problems. That design is how you get things done. The fundamental method, I think, of progress is human beings asking the right questions, then working together to solve them collectively. The smarter the people you get, the more I could, and we could talk about 70 different things that could be mentioned about this. But even if people are working on problem 1A, problem 1B, 1C, 1D, and they have similar character to each other, no, we want people to work on problem 1. We want everyone working on the same stuff. And this is really, you know, if you wanted to talk about the golden sequence being cool, I don't know of a better example. I mean, obviously Alan Turing solved the decision problem. That wasn't, I don't think, in the 1900 program, but his work was cornerstone to really a digital computing revolution at the heart of 20th century technologies and probably trillions of dollars of value. Changed the world because he was asking esoteric questions, but getting the smartest people to work on them, which is really interesting. I think we can learn a serious lesson from that. And then the other one is what a personal hero. I think a lot of people think of him as a hero, Richard Feynman. And Richard Feynman is kind of, go 2 slides forward. There he is. Look at Feynman and his family with his beautiful Feynman diagrams. He made these pictorial representations of what was going on with subatomic particles that made it a lot easier to work on them. And go back. Simple, standardized heuristics can be highly fruitful. And what these structures did was they created a form of basis. So we can think about Hilbert as helping, you know, give me sort of inspiration for create a problem set that's really well designed, and that's a good thing to do. And then Feynman helped by saying, create sort of a language for that problem set for people to work. A tools, heuristics, a operating system, if you will, for the problem set. Go to the next one. Well, that's literally a famous, very, 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 very famous car. And I think it's hysterical that he did that. He was a Nobel Prize winner, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to describe, as I've been alluding to, this political operating system. And this is a jumble of words. It's a system to do politics. I'll sort of try to tease apart what I mean by this political operating system. It's a language for politics. By ontologically defined, you'll see that I'm using sort of sufficient and necessary conditions and just paths and points in defining them. And that's what I mean by ontologically defined. But it's defined within a self-contained language for politics. This is the language that we're doing the Revitalizing America program through. What's amazing about this, though, is that it's commonly understandable, that anyone could drop a proposal like I'm going to show you down, never need to talk to you. You know exactly what they're talking about, which I think is different, right, than the universal healthcare comment I made before. So I wanted to create a way that was very precise, very crisp way to do politics, call it rigorous, and there's going to be a set, and we'll walk through a few of these, of modules, heuristics, and other structures that are, these are the language, if you will. We can slice and dice this a million ways, but I call it a political operating system. I think you get the idea. And the point is, like, a proper game needs to be coherent, and coherence, it requires a rules framework, right? There are no rules in politics. It's all wild. So I want to create some structure, and that should seem to be, I think, obvious in some sense. Now, is it trivial? I don't think so. I don't think it's trivial whatsoever. And I think if you look at the baseline, it's not trivial. And I think what you'll see is it's simple and it's obvious after the fact. And that's the whole damn point. So I joke that 21st century politics will be about paths and points. Let me talk about this really quick. So we are at A. These are the initial conditions. Anytime you start a problem, you have initial conditions. You are at point A. This is the solution, Z. Where are you trying to get to? I'm going to explain what A and Z are and what paths and points are, but just so we're on the same page. This is time. It's really just a sequence of steps. In something I call sequence space, just colloquially. But the paths are going to be numbered with 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are ordered chains of sufficient conditions. How do you get from A to B, as we'll see on the next slide, a path from A to B, which is sufficient to effectuate B? What is B? Well, it's a package of necessary conditions. That's it. That's what it is. So I'm going to be talking about paths, the sufficient conditions, and points, the necessary conditions. And this is cool to me because I feel like kids can understand the output of this. Maybe it'll be hard to work on these things, as you'll see, because they are hard to model this out. It is hard to model these things out to come up with sort of simple answers to hard problems and cut through all the dross. But at the same time, paths and points, I think people can understand this. So go to the next slide. I'm going to build up to what it looks like in full swing. But in some sense, you could think of the world as A to B. Point A or state A of the system, point B or state B of the system. And again, A is these two necessary conditions in this example. What is B? B is necessary conditions 3 through 5. That's what B is. How does B become this path? Okay, so go to the next slide. And then just a little, another view style, same thing, sort of same flavor. This is just chronology, a sequence, a chronology. Maybe I'll point out, I'm showing that, A, there could be multiple sufficient conditions that, effectuate A. You sort of get this imagery in your head. This is sort of the structure I think would be fruitful. So these are the necessary conditions, these are sufficient conditions. Just another V style, same stuff. Next slide. Okay, so this is a toy model, but this is the solution framework. This is what I call an acceptable solution. This is what I want you to put a solution in. I don't care if you have 75,000 pages, 75,000 models, tons of complexity. I don't care if you're using pointers to point all over the place. This is the distillation of a solution. And what a solution to me is the full answer. It's a step-by-step implementation to go from initial conditions to your solution. And again, it's just paths and points. Just for purposes of actually using this, it gets hard, right, to say, oh, how are we going to go from A to Z? I mean, you might be talking about something 10 years away. You might be talking about sort of an idealized state. Just one point of emphasis. These are going to be iterative, and we're going to continually use these and make new points and show new paths and sort of update our work to track if we're doing things well, if the model's still good. But my suggestion is to find Z, define it, and then start to work backwards and try to make as many points as you can, sort of check, here is 20% of the way. This is, how do we get to D? This is a great point to get to. We want to get to D, we want to get to M. There's gonna be different, I think, merit of finding specific points that are like critical points, probably, points that are necessary versus points that are just possible to use. But this is the overall structure. This is jokingly the state space count of steps. This is not a space. This is a chronological sequence of how are you going to get me from A to Z, specifically described so that anyone could any faceta, a person of ordinary skill in the art, sort of a patent law sort of idea. Someone who understands the subject could literally take this and say, this is the answer, and this is going to be so granular, hopefully, that it essentially is what the law can become. I'm going to talk about why we want to do these as simple as possible, because I think simple laws have a lot of merit. But this is the overall, we'll come back to this because this is going to be, I think, important, but go forward and just keep this in mind. Okay, and just a review of the solution overview. So we're defining Z, the point of destination, and I was just alluding to the idea of wanting to do simple compressed models. Pareto principle, 80% of the effects from 20% of the causes. There actually seems to be a really fruitful idea of capturing the most important substance and compressing it, making it more dense, using a simple model that captures really what you're trying to capture. That actually seems good, and especially when you layer it on this. Complexity and asymmetric information breed. They breed, right? When you have really complex, cumbersome laws, think about insurance as a perfect example. You have an immense amount of asymmetric information, you have an immense amount of complexity, and that just festers. It makes things worse. So I think one of the virtues of model making or coming up with a solution to a problem is going to probably be taking these two things to do something simple and compressed, and probably it makes it much more workable, which is probably going to be a good thing. And then we're going to put that model from one into this sequence space from the last slide, and this output is really just a well-defined step-by-step schema that any faceta can operationalize. And I have a joke, this is Clarence Thomas' style of politics. The inside joke part of that is he doesn't like to hear oral argument, and he doesn't like to talk. He just likes to read words because he doesn't want to be persuaded by a good orator. The idea is sort of like these things stand on themselves. And honestly, and I'll get to this, maybe I get to this later, I don't know if I do, but holy crap, wouldn't you like to see what politicians could actually come up with real solutions? Wouldn't you like to see what people can produce? And wouldn't this be a great way to evaluate the skills that a candidate has maybe? So these things stand on themselves, and the cool thing, as we're going to get to in a second, is this whole structure that I'm talking about, to me, is one big data structure. The models are data structure, the initiatives are data structure, the heuristics are data structures, is going to allow so many people to work on problems together in a uniform way with basis. And I think that cannot be emphasized enough. So when I'm talking about this, and I showed you that A through Z, that's like the last thing we get to. That's the end state. That's after probably years of working on a problem. There are primitives that go into that. I want to make a good model for healthcare, let's say. Okay, so let me just talk through a few of these as just from a model making standpoint, things that would be good versus bad. So opt-in versus opt-out. Right now we have an opt-in model. That is, the government spends billions and billions and billions of dollars trying to get you to sign up for stuff, and the consumers waste billions and billions of hours of time, and they don't comply. Well, that's an opt-in model. An opt-out model would be smarter, clearly, if you could have something like a two-state system where you're either in a public option or you're not. And if you opt out, maybe they could have something like a tax credit for those that aren't using the public option. See how this could be opt-in or opt-out. We could talk about multiple states of a system. What's the healthcare overall system going to look like? And just the point I'm trying to illustrate is that we're going to make models to find the actual solution we want. And that's an end output product that I was showing on the last two slides. It's not like easy, this is like, boom, 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 you're done. No, there's going to be a lot that goes into it. And just from while I'm talking about healthcare, there are other principles you want, right? You want something like leverage bargaining. In the UK, they buy all the hips. Okay, so 3 companies are competing, and you're going to drive down the prices when the government's buying all the hips. So you want some type of leverage bargaining to drive down price. You probably want to get rid of state-county lines. Why? Because you could have more bona fide competition. in this two-state model, imagine a really robust public option. You could actually create sort of incentives for the companies to bid against each other, because why would I not use a public option that's available? So, and just to be clear, highfalutin stuff, I'm talking about model making, yada, yada, yada. No, this is a multi-step solution. So, Bernie Sanders was like, okay, well, Medicare for all. That's a good idea, actually. It's C, right? That's the quick fix. That's C in my analogy. And we work on getting the full-scale overhaul, which is Z. So just to go show you what's like going into this type of thing and how it would be operationalized. Next slide. Okay, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's stick figure game theory. People in this room know how much I care about this issue. I don't think the data models that underlie the Internet of Everything, I think they're so critical across social, legal, economic, even political fronts. And if we look at the middle, I call it stick figure because it's like, oh, here's an arrow. Oh, here's a two-sided arrow. Oh, maybe that's an arrow that sandboxes data. And showing that we're at a suboptimal equilibrium right now. So right now we're at this model where user B gives all his data to platform A. But there's a way, and I don't want to talk about a business I'm working on, but just showing that these types of things, what did I do? I isolated the asset of interest, data. And I used a sort of very primitive heuristic and said, oh, arrows, cool, I can show you a more optimal position. Therefore, a solution could be available. And if you know how to, how to effectuate that, you can, right? Because the point of this is that you're going to have a lot of this type of pre-work, right? A lot of pre-work. The past two examples show that. That's all I'm trying to point out. This is not about data. It's not about anything like that. Next slide. All right. So now we get to the problems of our time initiative. This is the the big crescendo. This is what we're really working up towards. Okay. So I tried to put together a list of the most fundamental, quote unquote, problems across domestic and international matters, and imagine fielding 5 to 10 solutions for each of these problems that are well organized, well structured, and the solutions are well structured. Wow, that would create a playbook for the United States, a North Star for the first half of the 20th century. You basically would create a menu, something of a library of law, that when legislators came in, they actually would be legislating. They'd be picking from this laws and actually implementing them. They wouldn't be pretending they're going to come up with really robust, good solutions. Oh, I just got in. Oh, healthcare's a thing. Boom, 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 done. No, I want to source from the, really the public intelligentsia. It's nonpartisan. I made jokes about Democrats, Republicans, but I really haven't said anything about ideology. I didn't say anything about partisanship. I didn't say anything about the politicians. It's an open source and nonpartisan initiative because remember, no matter the political party in charge, American politics can be only as good as our actionable and finalized ideas. And this to me seems to be something that there isn't, giving you a little sort of quasi-thought experiment. Think about imagine there were 535 a Congress back in the day. But think about like those 535, like the founders, and how smart they were compared to the rest of the society. And now think of the 535 today and how they compare to the rest of society. I think a very blunt, honest thing, and I'm amazed when you go on the internet, you study, you go on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. There are so many goddamn smart people all across the country that have so much subject matter expertise that could be so helpful, and they don't have a forum to be helpful. They don't have an organized structure that they can work within. And I really want to tap into 50, 100, 1,000. Honestly, my argument before is I think if I got 50, 100, 1,000 people to work on this, you'd have astronomically more productivity than the whole of the United States Congress. That sounds like a strong statement. I think it's true. So, next one. And again, it really is Operation Focus the Intelligentsia. And what do we want them to do? What do we want to do? What do I want to be part of? It's really 3 things. I want to provide a landscape of actual and reasonable solutions to well-framed problems of worthy consideration. I want to provide detailed and unbiased arguments for the best available of that spectrum of solutions for the consideration of the people. And I want to codify the detailed routes for how to get there for each solution in a language for politics which is both well-defined and robust and also simple. Because really, it is so true from like a political philosopher hat on. I really think everyone should be able to understand the law. I think that's a really important thing to have buy-in. I think you can get a lot of simplicity out of this and have a format that people can learn. could even be taught in schools one day. This idea of paths and points as a way to do state planning. I think it's necessary. I literally think it's necessary. But I think it's awesome that it checks that box, that I think it's understandable too. So here's the roadmap. I'm launching the program. I guess you'd say this is sort of not like not trying to be a jerk, but I'm sort of aligning the program with the 116th Congress that I'm not a part of. From January 3rd to January 21st, January 3rd, 221, whatever that, I can't even say it. I want to effectuate this in that time period so that the 117th Congress can be really effective and have this library of law and have this American playbook to go forward. So it's, what I have, 6? Okay, so launch the program. Want to build a review panel of experts, 2 people with their PhDs for each of the questions maybe, really good subject matter expertise that could evaluate the solutions. I want to, announce the finalists, and then I want to have lectures of the finalists. Obviously, you're going to have your answers to things, but I want, and as we'll talk about in a second, is there's obviously going to be a huge atlas of work that goes into producing a solution. Well, what's also important is I want to have a single place where if you're working on this problem, you can go to the ultimate atlas, the wiki, if you will, of, here are all the, here are solutions 1 through 5. Okay, these are great solutions. Let me see the work that's attached to them. So I want to organize lectures for the finalists. And then I want to have this dream I have. Go to the next slide. This great American debate, this like public Super Bowl. Imagine, it's so fanciful to say. Imagine on the floor of Congress, you had serious people putting forward their proposals. They've already been chosen. They've given lectures. They're brilliant. They're awesome people. And then they have a debate. Maybe you have teams, and you have, because the people that make the ideas might not want to do the oration. But go back to the next slide. The idea is like a public Super Bowl. What if you had an annual event where you did this year after year, and you just updated? You maybe added new problems. Problem solved. Cool. Got a new problem. But you have something of an annual event, and you have public interest in something that actually goddamn matters. That is, I would die a happy man if that could happen. But I just think this idea of a great American debate has, sort of, I think it's brandable. I think it could be on damn C-SPAN. I think it'd be cool. But that's sort of, it doesn't need to be part of this, but I think that'd be really cool. Maybe not in year 1, but maybe if this takes off going forward. Go to the next slide, please. All right, summarize goals. So this is sort of repeating, but I just wanted to capture this in one slide. So we're going to develop a detailed end-to-end American playbook, which is the menu of acceptable solutions under each problem. This is hopefully going to guide us for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's an iterative composite, right? It serves as America's North Star. Where are we going? And it includes how are we going to get there. This culminates in this atlas of related work. If you want to know what's going on with climate change, go to the climate change problem. Wow, the whole atlas of really good, crisp work is there. Cool. If you're going to work on it, you can add to that atlas. That's great. One place, so we're not restarting from scratch every time we address something. And how about this library of laws idea? This idea that when you create this big playbook, even in the candidate selection process, what are you picking? And this ties into the next point. Well, if you're saying nonsense, it's really easy to spot in my schema, right? Because if you're not saying I support, for problem 10, proposal 1 through 5, you're just saying something else. If it's not rigorous, if it's not in this form, it's nonsense. If you're not talking about problems 1 through 23, if you're just talking about an emerging problem, it's nonsense, right? I'll embed you in my structure. So this becomes, in a really interesting way, over if you think of this panning out, by creating this, well-defined basis for politics, you get standards, right? You can create some standards. It's chaos out there. I don't know what else to do, right? I think if you did this, you could demonstrate superiority. And I honestly think if this got adopted, I think there would be pressure to adopt this if some people who were smart got in the game and did adopt it. And then I think really the end result, hopefully, is a meaningful, coherent, and effective problem solving of the public space. And obviously I didn't mention, but from candidate selection to the party platform, everything is included in this. And remember, I have not talked about using one politician. I have not talked about one election. I don't need elections. I don't need politicians. I need the smart people from around the country that give a shit to actually work on something in a uniform way with structure. So what's next? this is one of my favorite quotes. You're like, ask not what your country can do for you. I really want to sort of light the fire and hopefully try to get this initiative off the ground. That's my goal. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to keep working on this stuff. I'm going to keep trying to answer as many of these problems as I can. I'm going to keep making heuristics to build out this Revitalizing America program. But I just want, to leave you with, imagine literally the best 535 people in the United States, the smartest people literally in the United States. Imagine if they actually worked together, and imagine how much better they could be than the 535 people we have in Washington today. So that's it. Thank you.